Hello everyone and welcome back to The Lost Planeswalker. You're here with me, Jesse, the Lost Planeswalker, and today I'm doing a commander deck built around Mr.House, President, and CEO. This is a super cool new card from the Fallout commander decks. I believe this is actually one of the commanders, but I want to get ahead and kind of build a deck around this because I thought this was already so cool. So, Mr.House, President, and CEO is red, white, black, or Mardu, legendary artifact creature human. Whenever you roll a 4 or higher, create a 3/3 colorless robot artifact creature token. If you rolled a 6 or higher instead, create that many tokens and a treasure. So you basically create the token and then a treasure. In addition, you can play 4 tap, roll a 6-sided die, plus an additional 6-sided die for each mana from treasure spent to activate this ability. So potentially up to 5 rolls. And if, they're either 4 or 6, you're making robots. And if they're 6, you're also getting a treasure. It's also a 0/4, so it's not powerful, but it's not going to die from like a lightning bolt either. So this deck is quite simple. I'm actually only dividing this up into 2 parts because of just how simple it actually is. We're going to be rolling a lot, and all the rest of that stuff is just things that help us with those rolls and help us roll more. So starting out always, I have the land base, and I am not doing any lands for this deck. It's just mountains, plains, and swamps. I will say I am including 18 mountains, 9 plains, and 9 swamps. I normally don't split it up like that. I usually like to keep it pretty even, because even when I'm playing a deck that, has 3 colors, I like to keep that color distribution pretty even, just so I can make sure to cast everything. But it is pretty important here, because there is a huge majority of red cards, and if we want to be able to cast them every turn, I do need as more red than any other color. But the rest of that is up to you. If you want to go expensive, if you want to go cheap, that's all for you to decide. I didn't want to waste anybody's time by telling them about lands that they are probably going to research on their own anyways. But the next category, I guess the first of 2 categories, is going to be roll some dice, where I talk about rolling dice. And right off the bat, you will see why this deck was kind of really easy to build. It is Ancient Brass Dragon, Ancient Copper Dragon, and Ancient Gold Dragon. What? Baldur's Gate cards? Why do we care about that? Mr.House doesn't say a 6-sided die. He just says if you roll 4 or higher and 6 and higher. So all of the Baldur's Gate dice that say, hey, roll a d20, meaning pretty much odds-wise, we're going to be rolling a 4 or higher almost every time, and 6 or higher a little bit less, but a lot of the time. So Ancient Brass Dragon says, when it deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. When you do, put that number of target creature cards with total mana value X or less from the graveyard onto the battlefield. Ancient Copper Dragon is similar. When it deals damage, you create a number of treasure tokens equal to the result. And Ancient Gold is going to create a number of 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature tokens equal to the d20 roll. So in addition to getting the value off of those, you might get additional value off Mr.House himself. And then my second main source of roll cards you'll see next with Attempted Murder, Berserker's Frenzy, and Celebrate 8000. We also have a ton of legal playable cards from Unfinity, and those all care about you rolling d6s. So not as great, but rolling a 4 or higher is half of the time. So that's actually really great. So Attempted Murder says choose target creature, roll X 6-sided dice. For each even result, put 2 -1/-1 counters on that creature, and for each odd result, create a 1/2 balloon bird creature token with flying named Stormcrow. Basically getting to roll as much as we want here, which is, awesome. Berserker's Frenzy says when you cast this only before combat or during combat before blockers are declared, roll 2d20 and ignore the lower result. Great, we're already rolling 2 dice instead of just 1. And then 1 through 14, choose any number of creatures they block this turn available. 15 through 20, you choose which creatures block this turn and how those creatures block. And Celebrate 8000 is 5 mana artifact creature clown robot. At the beginning of combat on your turn, roll 2 6-sided dice. For each result of 1, Celebrate 8000 gets +1/+1 until end of turn. For each other result, it gains the Indicted ability until end of turn. If you roll doubles, it also gains double strike until end of turn. So you can also gain Menace, Vigilance, Lifelink, Flying, Indestructible as well. Chaos Channeler, Chaos Dragon, and Circuits Act is next. Chaos Channeler says whenever it attacks, you roll a d20, and 1 through 9, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. 10 through 19, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play that card this turn. And on a 20, exile the top 3 cards. You may play them this turn. Chaos Dragon similarly has Flying Haste. Chaos Dragon attacks each combat if able, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, each player rolls a d20. Sadly, it's only counting when you roll for Mr. House, but you still get to roll a d20. And Circuit's Act is 3 mana sorcery for roll 3 6-sided dice. For each different result, create a 1/1 white clown robot artifact creature token. Next up, we have Clown Car, Clowning Around, and Comet Stellar Pup. Clown Car, another X spell where we get to choose the number of dice we roll, but for each odd result, create a 1/1 white clown robot artifact creature token, and for each even result, put a +1/+1 counter on Clown Car. Clowning Around, for 1 and a white, create 2 1/1 white clown robot artifact creature tokens, then roll a 6-sided die. If the result is equal to or less than the number of robots you control, create a 1/1 white clown robot artifact creature token. And Comet Stellar Pup, one of my favorite Planeswalker puppies. He is 2 red white legendary Planeswalker Comet, and his ability is just 0, roll a 6-sided die. 1 or 2, +2, then create 2 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. They gain haste until end of turn. 3 -1, then return a card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. And 4 or 5, Comet Stellar Pup deals damage equal to the number of loyalty counters on him to a creature or player, then -2 to his loyalty. 6 +1, you may activate Comet Stellar Pup loyalty ability 2 more times this turn. And there are some cards I'm going to talk about later on that can basically make Comet go kind of infinite, and it's really, really crazy. But this is a nice time to just cut in and say, hey, if you aren't subscribed to my channel and enjoy this video, please consider. I'm going to be doing all kinds of other Fallout Commander deck builds. I'm going to be talking about the set as it releases. I'm going to be talking about the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and if you're interested in that and seeing Commander decks and content around that, please stay tuned. I really appreciate it, and let's get right back to it. Next up, we have Component Pouch, Contraband Livestock, and Danis Macbay. Component Pouch says, tap to remove a component counter from Component Pouch, add 2 mana of different colors, or tap it to just roll a d20. And you just put component counters on it, whether it's 1 through 9, and 2 if it's 10 through 20. Contraband Livestock is a 2 mana instant, exile target creature, then roll a d20. Its creature's controller creates a 4/4 green ox creature token. 10 through 19, its controller creates a 2/2 green boar creature token, or 20, its controller creates a 0/1 white goat creature token. And Danis Macbray is 3 black sorcery. Each player sacks a non-token creature, roll a d20, and add the toughness of the creature you sacked this way. 1 through 14, return a creature card put in their graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. Or 15 plus, return up to 2 creature cards put into a graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. Pretty cool card. It's actually quite powerful, so very excited to see that. Next up, we have Delina Wild Mage, Earth Cult Elemental, and Falnir's Fireball. Delina Wild Mage has us roll a d20 when we attack and make a copy of a creature. If it's 1 through 14, we just make 1 copy of that creature and it exiles at the end of combat. If we get a 15 through 20, we create one of those tokens and roll again. So we have a potential to keep rolling over and over if we keep rolling high enough with Delina. Earth Cult Elemental says when it enters the battlefield, roll a d20. Each player sacks permanent, each opponent sacks permanent, or 20, each opponent sacks 2 permanents. We can get some really good value with that. Next, we have Fardir's Fireball for 3 red instant. It deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker and roll a d20. 1 through 9, Faldir's Fireball deals 2 damage to each player. 10 through 20, Faldir's Fireball deals 2 damage to each opponent. Moving on, we have Goblin Morningstar, Herald of Hadar, and Hoarding Ogre. Goblin Morningstar gives equipped creature +1/+0 and has trample. When it enters, we roll a d20. We create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. If we get a 1 through 9, and a 10 through 20, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token, and then attach the Morningstar to it. Herald of Hadar, 4 and a black creature human warlock, Circle of Death. For 5 and a black, we roll a d20. 1 through 9, each opponent loses 2 life. 10 through 19, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And a 20, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life and create 2 treasure token. And then we have Hoarding Ogre, which says when it attacks, roll a d20. 1 through 9, create a treasure token. 10 through 19, create 2 treasure tokens. And a 20 will get us 3 treasure tokens. Next up, we have Iron Mastiff, Lae'zel's Acrobatics, and Lightfoot Rogue. Iron Mastiff says when it attacks, roll a d20 for each player being attacked and ignore all but the highest roll. Iron Mastiff deals damage equal to its power to you. If you get a 1 through 9, a 10 through 19, Iron Mastiff deals damage equal to its power to defending player, or 20, Iron Mastiff deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. Lae'zel's Acrobatics, one of my favorites, exile all non-token creature control and then roll a d20. 1 through 9, return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. 10 through 20, return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control, then exile them again, return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So all of those cards that have us enter and roll, we get to do that, and if we get a 10 through 20, we get to do it twice. Lightfoot Rogue is 1 and a black. Sneak attack. When Lightfoot Rogue attacks, roll a d20. 1 through 9, it gains death touch until end of turn. 10 through 19, it gets +1/+1 and gains death touch until end of turn. Or 20, it gains +3/+0 and gains first strike and death touch until end of turn. Next up, we have Burkle's Edict, Non-Human Cannonball, and Nothing. Burkle's Edict is 1 in a black sorcery. You roll a d20. 1 through 9, choose an opponent. That player sacks a creature. 10 through 19, each opponent sacks a creature. 20, each opponent sacks a creature with the greatest power among creatures those players control. Non-Human Cannonball is 2 in a red artifact creature clown robot. When Non-Human Cannonball dies, roll a 6-sided die. If the result is 4 or less, Non-Human Cannonball deals that much damage to you. And Nothic is 4 in a black creature horror with when it dies, roll a d20. 1 through 9, you draw a card and lose 1 life. 10 through 19, you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Or 20, you draw 7 cards and lose 7 life. A great cost, but a great reward. Next, we have Recruitment Drive, Revivify, and Spike Pit Trap. Recruitment Drive says roll a d20. 1 through 9, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. 10 through 19, create 2 2/2 white knight creature tokens. Or 20, create 3 2/2 white knight creature tokens. Revivify is 2 in a white. Instant, roll a d20 and add the number of creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. 1 through 14, return all creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn to your hand. Or 15 plus, return those cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Spiked Pit Trap is a 1 mana artifact with flash, and for 5, sack it, choose a target creature, and then roll a d20. 1 through 19, Spiked Pit Trap deals 5 damage to that creature. 10 through 20, Spiked Pit Trap deals 5 damage to that creature, and then create a treasure token. Next, we have Swarming Goblins, the Deck of Many Things, and Thunderwave. Swarming Goblin says when it enters the battlefield, roll a d20. 1 through 9, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. 10 through 19, create 2 of those tokens, and 20, create 3 of those tokens. Deck of Many Things is a 5 mana legendary artifact that can kind of bite you in the butt, but for 2 mana, roll a d20 and subtract the number of cards in your hand. If the result is 0 or less, discard your hand. 1 through 19, return a card at random from your graveyard to your hand. 10 through 19, draw 2 cards. Or 20, put a creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. When that creature dies, its owner loses the game. Pretty powerful effect if you can get 20, and can be very devastating. Thunderwave says roll a d20. 1 through 9, Thunderwave deals 3 damage to each creature. 10 through 19, you may choose a creature. Thunderwave deals 3 damage to each creature not chosen that way. And 20, Thunderwave deals 6 damage to each creature your opponents control. Next up is Treasure Chest, Vexing Puzzle Box, and Wand of Wonder. Treasure Chest is an artifact that says sack it, then roll a d20. 1, trapped, you lose 3 life. 2 through 9, create 5 treasure tokens. 10 through 19, you gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. Or 20, search your library for a card. If it's an artifact card, you may put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put that card into your hand, then shuffle. Vexing Puzzle Box for 3 mana. Whenever you roll 1 or more die, put a number of charge counters on Vexing Puzzle Box equal to the result. Add 1 mana of any color. Roll a d20. Tap and remove 100 charge counters from Vexing Puzzle Box. Search your library for an artifact card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. And Wand of Wonder for 4 mana. Roll a d20. Each opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card, then shuffle the rest into their library. You may cast up to X instant and sorcery spells from among cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. If you get a 1 through 9, you can cast 1 of them. If you roll a 10 through 19, you can cast 2 of them, and if you cast a 20, you can cast 3 of those without paying their mana cost. And lastly, for the roll cards, we have Will's Reversal. It's an instant with counter, target spell, or ability with 1 or more targets. Roll a d20 and add the greatest power among creatures you control. 1 through 14, you may choose a new target for the spell or ability. And at 15 plus, you may choose a new target for that spell or ability. Then copy it, you may choose a new target for the copy. And the second category I have in this deck is all of the good stuff. And normally I like to split things up into at least 3 categories, but there really wasn't too much here. You know, I have all of this other good stuff with a few cards that benefit rolling, but really the rolling is the main focus of this deck. Everything else is just, you know, stuff that's going to help you do it even better. So first off, I have Barbarian Class, Bitter Reunion, and Blasphemous Act. Barbarian Class is a 1 mana enchantment that says if you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice plus 1 and ignore the lowest result. So already, you're just rolling an additional die every time. For 1 in a red, at level 2, when you roll 1 or more dice, target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains menace until end of turn. And at level 3, creatures you control have haste. Bitter Reunion is a cool enchantment that says when it enters battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2. Then Then for 1, sack it. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. And Blasphemous Act, a well-known card that costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield, will deal 13 damage to each creature. If you're in a pinch, this might be just the way to get out. Next is Boros Charm, Boros Signet, and Brazen Dwarf. Boros Charm is a 2-mana instant that says choose one. Deal 4 damage to target player or planeswalker. Permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn, or target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Boros Signet, similarly, is a 2-mana artifact that you pay 1 to tap for a red and white. And Brazen Dwarf says whenever you roll 1 or more dice, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, making your rolling actually dealing a ton of damage to them. Next up, we have Cyberman Patrol, Dark Confidant, and Tahada, Binder of Wills. Cyberman Patrol says artifact creatures you control have Afflict 3, meaning whenever a creature with Afflict becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. That's notable here because Mr.House also makes 3/3 robots, meaning that they either take the 3 from them hitting them or get Afflict 3 damage, which is amazing. Dark Confidant is next, and at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library and put the card into your hand. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Just an easy way to draw some cards, and you're going to lose a little bit of life in the process, but if Mardu isn't about that, I don't know what else is. And Tahada, Binder of Wills, a great planeswalker that is 1 red, white, black legendary planeswalker Tahada. You can +2 her to give up to 1 target legendary creature gains vigilance, lifelink, and indestructible until your next turn. -3, reveal the top 4 cards of your library, put any number of legendary cards from among them into your hand and put the rest into your graveyard. Create a treasure token for each card that was put into your graveyard this way. And -11, gain control of all non-land permanents until end of turn. Untap them, they gain haste until end of turn. A great way to gain some more life, give some stuff indestructible, or dig through your library to find some legendary things and make some treasure in the process. Imp's Mischief, Night Shift of the Living Dead, and Orzhov Charm are next. Imp's Mischief just lets you change the target of target spell with a single target. You lose life equal to its mana value. Night Shift of the Living Dead is great because after you roll a die, you may pay 1 life. If you do, you can increase or decrease the result by 1. Do this only once each turn. And whenever you roll a 6, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Getting to augment those rolls is going to help us, maybe get 1 more up that we need to hit that next level on all of those D&D cards. And Orzhov Charm says choose 1. Return target creature card you control and all auras you control attached to it to their owner's hand. Destroy all target creature and you lose life equal to its toughness, or return target creature with converted mana cost 1 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then we have Orzhov Signet, Path to Exile, and Prosper Tomebound. Orzhov Signet, again, pay 1 mana, get an Orzhov set of mana. Path to Exile, just a great removal. Tilpus, move on with the game. And Prosper Tomebound says Death Touch, Mystic, Arcanum. At the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of your library. Until your next turn, you may play that spell, and Pact Boon whenever you play a card from exile, create a treasure token. Next is Rakdos Charm, Rakdos Signet, and Shadow Spear. Rakdos Charm lets us exile target player's graveyard, destroy target artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. Rakdos Signet, similarly, can be tapped for 1 mana to add a black or red. And Shadow Spear, great card. I put this in pretty much every deck because of how powerful it is. It gives a creature +1/+1, it has trample, it gives lifelink, and we can remove hexproof and indestructible. So it is worth including in pretty much any deck. Next up, we have Skull Clamp, Swords of Plowshares, and Tempered Steel. Skull Clamp was also included in this deck because we're going to make in a bunch of little things, and if we can just sack those to draw cards, we'll be plenty happy. Swords of Plowshare, again, another great removal in white, probably one of the best, and it's very cheap and very powerful. And Tempered Steel is an enchantment that says artifact creatures you control get +2/+2, giving all of our little robots, turning them into 5/5s and making them a big threat. Terror of the Peaks, Whip of Erebos, and Witch's Mark is next. Terror of the Peaks is great in this deck because whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, it's going to deal damage equal to that creature's power to any target. So all of those Mr.House robots that we make are just going to deal 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage, and we can either use it to clear the board or deal a ton of damage to our opponents. Whip of Erebos just gives all of those robots we're making lifelink, which is great, but in addition, we can pay 2 black to return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste and we exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So that's awesome as well. Maybe we want to get something back. Maybe we want to roll some more dice. Who knows? And Witch's Mark, one of my favorite cards coming from the Wilds of Eldraine. You can discard a card if you do draw 2 cards and then create a Wicked roll token. And last but not least, we have Will, Blade of Frontier, and Xeno Squirrels. Will is a legendary human warlock that says if you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice +1 and ignore the lowest result. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, put a +1/+1 counter on Will, Blade of Frontier. another effect that we really want to get that's going to help us roll even better and roll more dice. And Xeno Squirrel says when it enters battlefield with 2 +1/+1s on it, after you roll a die, you can remove a +1 to increase or decrease the result by 1. And boy, howdy, that is it. This was a super, super fun deck to build, and I honestly might build it just because of how incredibly silly but fun it seems. Mr. House, President and CEO, is going to be a powerhouse, and I just can't wait to see what other cards they pump into this deck, because I imagine it just has to be full of rolling dice. And other than the cards I've listed, we really don't have a lot of that, especially in Mardu. So I can't wait to see what other cards they create, and I hope you can't wait either and want to stay tuned and consider subscribing to my channel. I work really hard on these videos. I hope you enjoyed. If there's a comment, hey, you left this card out, or hey, you should have thrown this in, please let me know. I would love to see it in the comments down below. And if you want to help me out in another way, please consider leaving a like and sharing this with a friend. It would really mean a lot to me. Now, today's Scryfall card of the day is Airy Mystics. They are cautious with their body language and facial expression. Any stray movement could betray their position of the troops they protect and cost of many lives. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.